A pregnant architect walks into a private hospital suite and finds her venture capitalist husband cradling another woman's newborn, whispering promises he never kept to her. She should have crumbled. She should have begged. But what neither of them knew was that the quiet woman they dismissed owned 92% of everything they thought was his. What happens next isn't just revenge. It's a masterclass in silence, strategy, and the kind of power money can't buy when you already own it all. Before we begin, tell us what time you're watching from and drop your location in the comments. We love hearing from you. Rain misted against the glass doors of Sterling Memorial Hospital as Claire Whitmore stepped into the lobby just past 1 in the morning. The cold Portland air clung to her wool coat, and her hand instinctively moved to rest on the curve of her belly, 8 months along, carrying weight that felt heavier tonight than it had all week. Her husband, Jonathan, had texted 3 hours earlier. Emergency board crisis. Don't wait up. But his location shared something different. Sterling Memorial, Labor and Delivery Wing. She had called twice. Both went to voicemail. Claire moved toward the elevator, her breath shallow, her thoughts racing faster than her careful steps would suggest. The doors opened with a soft chime. She pressed 4 and watched the numbers climb while her pulse climbed with them. When the doors slid open, she entered a hallway that smelled of antiseptic and warm blankets. A nurse passed, smiling politely at Claire's pregnant form before disappearing around a corner. Claire's eyes caught something that stopped her cold. Draped across a chair near Suite 408 was Jonathan's navy cashmere overcoat, the one with the monogrammed lining she'd had made for their anniversary. Beside it sat his leather portfolio and the insulated coffee mug she'd given him last Christmas. Her throat tightened. A nurse emerged from Suite 408, glancing at a chart. "Father can come back now," she called. "Baby's crowning." Claire felt the floor tilt beneath her. She moved toward the door on legs that no longer felt like her own. Through the small window, she saw him. Jonathan stood at the bedside, his hand wrapped around another woman's, his face close to hers as he whispered encouragement. The woman, younger, dark-haired, trembling through contractions, gripped his hand the way Claire once had during their childbirth classes. Claire recognized her immediately. Vanessa Rain. Jonathan's junior partner at the firm, the woman he'd called brilliant and invaluable at every dinner party for the past year. Claire stepped back from the window, her palm pressed flat against her chest as if holding her heart in place. The suite door opened. Jonathan stepped out, wiping his hands with a towel. When he looked up and saw her, his entire body went rigid. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, glancing around nervously. "Claire, this isn't, you shouldn't be here." She opened her mouth, but no words came. He moved closer, lowering his voice. "You need to leave now before you make this worse." "Worse," she whispered. Before he could answer, Vanessa's voice drifted through the cracked door. "Jonathan, please, I need you." Claire's vision blurred. Jonathan glanced back, torn for half a second, then looked at Claire with cold impatience. "Go home," he said. "I'll explain later." He disappeared back into the room. The door clicked shut. Claire stood frozen in the bright, sterile hallway as her world quietly shattered into pieces too small to gather. Claire collapsed in the parking lot 20 minutes later. Paramedics brought her to the ER, stabilized her vitals, and released her at dawn with warnings about stress and rest. She didn't go home. Instead, she took a car to the glass tower overlooking the Willamette River, the penthouse where her mother, Helen Whitmore, had lived since Claire's father passed. Helen opened the door before Claire could knock. Her silver hair was pulled back, her expression calm but sharp. She studied her daughter's face for 3 seconds, then stepped aside. "Sit," Helen said gently. Claire sank onto the sofa near the floor-to-ceiling windows. The river stretched below, gray and endless. Helen disappeared briefly, returning with a thick leather portfolio. She set it on the coffee table between them. "You've forgotten who you are," Helen said quietly. "So I'm going to remind you." She opened the portfolio. Inside were documents Claire hadn't seen in years, stock certificates, shareholder agreements, trust allocations signed when she was 23 and too young to understand their weight. You own 92% of Whitmore Capital, Helen said. Not Jonathan, you. Claire stared at the papers. Your father left the firm to you. I've managed it while you built your architecture practice because that's what you wanted. But the company, the accounts, the voting shares, the assets Jonathan thinks are his, they're yours. Claire's breath came shallow and quick. Helen pulled out another folder. I hired a forensic accountant last month. Jonathan's been siphoning funds for 18 months. Luxury hotels, private travel, jewelry, cash withdrawals disguised as client development. She slid a printed email across the table. The subject line read, RE, discretionary fund access. Claire read Jonathan's words. She doesn't check the statements. Keep it quiet. Her hands trembled. You are not powerless, Helen said. You never were. That afternoon, Vanessa Rain stepped out of a black Range Rover on Fifth Avenue, her designer sunglasses glinting in the spring sun. She placed one hand on her hip, letting photographers capture her, new mother, rising star, woman who'd won. Jonathan stood beside her, confident and smiling. They entered an upscale bistro where conversations paused as they passed. Vanessa leaned into Jonathan, laughing loudly, her voice carrying across the room. Everyone keeps asking when we're making it official, she said, fingering the diamond bracelet on her wrist. Jonathan grinned. Let them wonder. She ordered champagne and lobster, speaking loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. She name-dropped designers, mentioned private dinners, hinted at upcoming announcements. Later, they stopped at a boutique. Vanessa tried on 6 dresses, emerging from the fitting room each time with a theatrical spin. All of them, she told the associate. Jonathan nodded. She checked her reflection in the mirror, smiling with absolute certainty. This was her life now. She'd earned it. 3 days later, Jonathan arrived at the penthouse unannounced. Claire answered the door. He stepped inside without waiting, dropping a leather folder on the counter. Divorce agreement, he said briskly. I've made it fair. You sign here, we file quietly, and everyone moves on. Claire said nothing. You're not stable, he continued. You've been emotional, erratic. This is better for you and the baby. Vanessa's willing to arrange visitation once things settle. Claire's fingers curled slightly. Jonathan leaned against the counter. She understands me in ways you never did. She's ambitious. She's present. She wants the life I'm building. Claire met his eyes. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. We'll handle this properly. Jonathan smiled, mistaking her quiet for surrender. Good, I'll have my attorney finalize everything. He left without looking back. Claire stood in the silence, her heartbeat steady, her decision made. The ballroom of the Sentinel Hotel filled quickly. Whitmore Capital's annual meeting drew investors, analysts, and press. Jonathan arrived early, adjusting his tie, shaking hands, owning the room. He stepped toward the podium. Then the rear doors opened. Claire entered in a tailored black suit, her posture straight, her steps measured. Conversations stopped. Cameras turned. Jonathan froze. Claire walked to the stage, accepted a microphone, and turned to face the room. Thank you for being here, she said softly. Before we proceed, I need to clarify something important. She paused. I am the majority owner of Whitmore Capital. I hold 92% of voting shares. I always have. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She opened a folder. Recent audits revealed unauthorized withdrawals, falsified expense reports, and misappropriated funds totaling over $2 million. The screens behind her lit up with receipts, emails, bank transfers, all signed by Jonathan. Effective immediately, Jonathan Whitmore is removed from all positions pending criminal investigation. Jonathan stepped forward. Claire, stop. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, she said. Security approached. Jonathan backed away, his face draining of color. You can't do this, he whispered desperately. But the guards took his arms and cameras captured every second as he was escorted down the aisle. Vanessa stood near the entrance, her hands shaking, her confident smile shattered. Claire remained on stage, silent and unshaken, as the room erupted around her. 6 weeks later, the judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. Mr. Whitmore, you are sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for embezzlement, fraud, and obstruction. The gavel struck. Jonathan's head dropped. Vanessa sobbed in the gallery, her fantasy destroyed. Claire sat quietly in the second row, her hands folded over her belly. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Outside, Claire descended the courthouse steps into warm sunlight. Reporters called her name, but she walked past them, her steps steady. She paused at the bottom, lifted her face to the sky, and breathed. The world had seen her silenced. Now they'd seen her rise. If Claire's story moved you, don't let it end here. Share this with someone who needs to remember their power. Comment below with if you believe silence can be the loudest weapon. Subscribe to hear more stories where the underestimated become unstoppable. And remember, the quiet ones aren't weak, they're just waiting for the right moment. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when not to speak, until it's time to speak volumes. Thank you for being here.